Shanties are exit stations and entry points at the same time. They're a kind of heterotopia, an unclassifiable space that are not on any map. The map is not the territory. Question: how do you map liminal spaces? How do you map heterotopias? Other spaces, impossible spaces, spaces that defy classification. We just attempt to map and order them because they're disappearing and their temporary architecture and social structure mean they're constantly in a mode of self-transformation. I'll just read one more entry from Fin de Mundo, World's End. Our tour continued to, Fin de Mundo means World's End, this is the name of one of the Sanchi towns. Our tour continued to the Estoril neighbourhood of Greater Lisbon. Estoril is a pleasant and relatively prosperous seaside town with a Formula One racetrack. It's a leafy, comfortable, and seems rather smug in the way it presents itself. Grand seaside buildings, restaurants, and piers seem to tell a story of a glorious and wealthy heritage. Estoril is also a hilly landscape as you mount the hills. Nestled on top of this, nestled on top on a steep precipice is Fin de Mundo, an aptly named shantytown in the process of dissolution. The Fin de Mundo, or World's End shantytown, is located directly adjacent to one of the new social housing barrier blocks developed by the local authorities, presumably to help absorb refugees from the shantytown largely private populations. Question: is the fact that many of these shantytowns are located in sites with the best views of the city merely a cruel and paradoxical coincidence? We're invited into a group of shacks that seem to be burrowed into the ravine. To enter, you have to climb into a very dark, small alleyway that ran in between several shacks and led into the homes of a number of the residents. Kizomba music was blaring loudly from some of the shacks. Groups of men sat around, and there were quite a few young people who had gathered to talk to us. We led into the home of an elderly woman who seemed like she was a matriarchal figure of some kind. The usual African hospitality was offered to us: sodas, cakes, biscuits, tea, or beer. We were told to make ourselves at home. Question: in such conditions of bare life urbanism, what can words like home possibly mean? Is there a universal sense of home and dwelling that all human beings have a right to? Who gives us a standard at all by which we can take the measure of nature and the nature of dwelling and building? That's a quote from Martin Heidegger: building, dwelling, and thinking. Okay, so that's just gives you a bit of a mental picture of the process and some of the images that I captured in my my visit to some of the shanty towns. What I want to quickly do now, just to round up. No, I think no, not this one. I want to just quickly go through some of the work in the exhibition in looking at the way that Monica responded to some of these notes that I wrote. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm not sure how, can you see that well? Okay, so this is one of the first works you saw as you came to the exhibition, called Greater Lisbon, A to Z, and one of the techniques in this, what it was as a map, mounted in a light box, but you can't really see it there, but when you go closer, all the names of the towns, you replace the actual place names from Lisbon with names from where the immigrants come from all over the world. So you'll find places in San Tome, you'll find places in Bangladesh, etc. So again, taking the map as this kind of tool of authority and this kind of spatial structure and undermining it by making it a sort of a global space. Okay, this is a strategy game. Monica was obsessed by the military and how the military kind of mapped Lisbon, because when she looked at these maps, she found that there was a whole different way, a different understanding of the space, of what we normally see as from an A to Z map, for example. The military had a completely different way of mapping that, and they bring out many different features, and she wanted to kind of like sort of make that visible. You can see she's placed. So she made 4 really beautiful maps, which were printed onto metallic sheets, and she cut out and put on a table with light. So it looked as though you get the impression of how military commanders who are planning a strategy are kind of taking over the city. It gives a different view, really, of the city and the way in which the military take over. This is some stills from the video that you've just seen, Military Road. This work is a triptych work, and these are two images here where the urban sort of landscape was, no, sorry, I lied. These are panoramic images, sorry, of the city, called here and there. She did some quite beautiful panoramas, again, showing Lisbonites a very unfamiliar view of their own city, which you don't really get from the city here. These images are, again, lightbox photographs, which was called Uma Casa Portuguesa, a Portuguese house. And these are some of the self-built images, self-built houses that some of the migrants built. I think this is from Toulouse. I think these are really stunning images. They remind me of Gordon Matta Clark's cutting images. It's entirely self-built. She kind of called it a Portuguese house because there's a kind of an ideal in Portugal, which is expressed in many of the kind of traditional fado songs about, you know, the home being the centre of your identity. And these are homes that were, many of them in the process of being destroyed by the state because they're seen as illegitimate. And as you can see, they're quite incredible structures, entirely built by local communities. This is an installation called Black House, which is basically a kind of a tent-like material, black material made from canvas, which is lit up inside and projects a kind of ghostly image. And I think Monica here was trying to, again, focus on this ideal of the home. And this is kind of almost like a negative imprint of what the home would be from the migrant's perspective. And of course, Black House implies a sense of connection with blackness, which is kind of somehow seems an alien space, an alien presence in the city. This is a beautiful work called Obras Públicas, Public Works. She basically was inspired by a photograph that she took of a cement mixer in outside one of the shanty towns. Because often they used old cement mixers that the migrants took them and found old cement mixers that were thrown away and rebuilt them and used them for their own purposes. And here she covered it with material suggesting a kind of tropical island communities, such as Cat Vale. So you kind of get that contrast between the hardness of the urban and this sense of something being constructed and the tropical nature of where these migrants come from. So the local and the global are kind of contained in many of these images. This I mentioned, I think you remember in my, one of the things I saw as I looked at the car was this snack bar called Paradise, and I just felt it was really ironic. It's kind of placed in the middle of such desolation. So Monica kind of made a work inspired by that, which is a kind of installation in this really quite rough room, and it flashes on and off. So when it was dark, you didn't see anything. When it flashed for a few seconds, you saw this sign, beautiful sign, Paradise, surrounded by such desolation. I think it really seemed to capture the situation of many of the migrants who often dreamed of Portugal being a kind of paradise away from home, but were obviously disappointed. I think there's some other works which were from some of the other artists, but I think what I'll do is stop there because I'm very conscious of the fact that Alex is going to talk, and perhaps we can actually bring up some other questions when we speak afterwards. So, thank you.